Hey, I'm all about bigger, bolder blooms. Hey, and more of them. So what I'm going to show you here in the fall is what I do to make sure that in the spring I get just that. Before we go any further, I'd like to thank our sponsors. The garden tours are made possible by Gilbert H. Wild & Son, who've been growing beautiful perennials since 1885. Ralston Family Farms, a farm family producing delicious rice for your table. First Community Bank, whose heart is in the community, as well as Sun Patience, Super Cal Petunias, and Dragon's Breath Celosia. And Crystal Bridges, Museum of American Art. Check out my website to learn more about the brands we love. So here we are in the fall garden, and you have to think, what can I do in the garden now that will make a big difference in the spring? Well, actually, there are a lot of things I like to do. One of them is good garden cleanup, and we've done pieces on that before, and you can look those up. And I don't want to go into too much of that today, but I want to really talk about planting for big, bold blooms, and a lot of them. So right now, this is our peony garden. We have 36 different varieties of peonies here, and this is Russian sage. It's one of my favorite perennials. I talk about it all the time. You know that if you follow us. These came from Gilbert H. Wild & Son. All our peonies, all our perennials come from there. And what I'm really focused on here are perennials, because they come back year after year. So what I did here is I planted this Russian sage along the edge of the perennials, in this case the peony bed. And what I'm doing this time of year is I'm taking the Russian sage and I'm just cutting it back. This is one of the toughest perennials you'll ever grow, and what I find is when I cut them back hard like this, they really shine. And the same way with the peonies. Now this one, we tag the hours, and sometimes the tagging works and sometimes the tagging doesn't. If you have ideas, I'd love to hear them. This is actually Coral Sunset Peony, which is a wonderful peony, particularly for those who live in more warmer climates. So everybody loves peonies, right? But my northern gardening friends, they can grow them beautifully because they have really cold winters, but you can't grow them so well down here in the hot, humid South. But luckily, Zone 8 right here near Little Rock, Arkansas, I'm fairly close to the line, and I can try, and what I do is always try to defy the odds, right? And that's what we're doing today. We're always trying to defy the odds. And so what I'm going to do here with these peonies is time to cut them back. We've had a hard freeze. All I'm doing here is I'm just taking off the foliage that was hit by the cold. And so that's really all there is to it. And I will not let any soil or mulch get down in between these stalks. And if you look very closely in here, you'll see the red eye of the peony. These flourished beautifully because we didn't plant them too deeply 2 years ago when we planted these beds. That's a problem. A lot of people plant peonies too deeply. So the design here is in summer through fall, we have the bloom of the Russian sage, which hides the aging foliage of the peonies. The peonies, of course, are spectacular for us in May, and other parts of the country further north in June. And what I'm doing today is I'm really trying to defy the critics and the odds and plant some oriental poppies. So why don't we step back over here? I've got a little area where I'm going to tuck a few in just for the fun of it, and we'll see how well they do. So I've got a few things out here that I'm going to need to plant, and I just brought a few examples of what's going in the ground today. We're going to plant the poppies, but first I want to talk about the peonies. I've got going to add a few peonies to this bed, and the first thing is I want to show you what a 7-eye peony tuber looks like. This is one of the reasons I like GHW so well. This is how they come. They come packaged in plastic like this, and that is one heck of a peony root. And this is what we call they'll come labeled this way, I'll show you, a 7+ eye peony. And this one is a double pink called Alexander Fleming, as the label suggests. It comes packed in some moist shavings, which can be just sort of integrated into the garden. They're not well decomposed, so I let them not get into the hole when I plant. But look at all the number of eyes there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 eyes there. So this is probably a 3 to 4 year old plant, and this is the kind of quality you really want. Now, when you plant peonies, the thing to keep in mind is they need well-drained soil, and you want to plant for the future. These things are going to be here for a long time. So I like to slightly sweeten the soil with just a little bit of lime. And I've worked this soil up just a little bit. It needs to be well drained, and one of the ways to make sure the soil is well drained is to just add some sand. And I've got keep some sand on hand, and this is really the best recipe, not only for the peonies, but also for the poppies. So the soil here, we added a lot of compost and a lot of manure when we created it. The key here, as I mentioned earlier, is to position where in this zone, since it's pretty warm, the eyes are fairly close to the surface. So what I want to do is I've pulled some of the soil around. You can see that here are the eyes here. And I'm going to add some water because I don't want this thing to sink. I want to fill up any air pockets. You can see all the air bubbling out now. And I'll let that settle for just a few minutes. Won't take long. See, it's draining well, which is important. Heavy clay soils are not ideal for peonies or these poppies that I'm going to show you in just a moment. So it's nicely hydrated. It came that way in the bag, and I'm just going to pull some soil around. You can see those little red eyes. Again, only a 1/2 inch soil on top is all I want. And presto, that's it. And you just let it go to sleep. It doesn't really sleep. It starts to produce roots. And then in the spring, it'll put up these red stems, followed by green leaves, and then soon beautiful buds. Okay, so let's talk about these oriental poppies for just a moment. This is where I'm really trying to defy the critics, and I encourage you to do that as a gardener. This is the oriental poppy, traditionally grown in English gardens, and for good reason. They're extraordinarily exquisite creatures, very, very luxurious looking. And this is got 2 plants here, of one called Harvest Moon, and I'm going to just gently take it out of the soil here. It's sort of in a burrito wrap, as we say. And the structure, the root structure of one of these poppies looks a bit like a carrot. Lots of little carrot roots you can see here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to plant this, which is very similar to the peony. I'm going to work up an area here, and these really do need well-drained soil. Okay, so I'm going to work up a place just like I did before. I'm going to add a double dose of sand. And I'm going to plant this a little bit high. See all that sand? Now, what I want to do is I want to work in a little bit of lime. Now, I've got a gentle mound here, and I'm opening up the planting hole where I can kind of gently spread those roots out. And I'm going to make sure I pull the soil just gently around the plant. I want it to be right at the sort of same level as the top of the plant. Let me go ahead and add some water for the same reason. You see how quickly the water soaks in around it, which is what you want. Now these things will go green all winter long. At least down here they will. There we go. Grow, little poppy. Grow, little Harvest Moon poppy. I'm going to put the other one right next to it. We'll see what happens in the spring. I hope you've been inspired to plant some bold and beautiful flowers in your garden and to defy the critics. I think it's fun to get out there and try new and different things. Until next time, I'm Alan Smith.